Hey everybody, so we're into the month of March now, so that means it's time to look at all the games we played in February, and this is the list of the games that made the top 9 list for those played during the month of February. So before we do that, let's look at the stats. So I've played 35 times, 25 different games, and that ended up being about 6% of the board game collection. So in number 9 position, we have Meadow. So Meadow is a new game that I bought actually just in the month of February, and I got to play it for the first time. The artwork is really cute, like it's all almost like watercolor of natures and stuff, so it's very neat looking. And it's an interesting game because so you have a hand of card that you're playing, and you start and you have a card that you can flip it. So there's a symbol that you decide which one you want to start with. And the way that it works is you can play cards that you have symbol representing. So if I have a worm and I have a butterfly in my hand that requires a worm, then I could cover the worm and now I have a butterfly instead, and so on. So you're doing that, kind of collecting the different one, and there's different terrain that you can have as the base, so you all play those on the terrain as well. So it's kind of a neat collecting card, playing cards, creating this I guess this grid of different cards, and then you kind of have to decide, okay, well, I need a butterfly to do this, but I also need you know, like this other symbol, a flower, let's say. So you want to try to make sure that you don't cover the symbol that you need, that you kind of leave available for what you're trying to build. And as you go, the cards become a little bit more advanced, so there's more symbols required. It's an interesting game. What's really neat as well is every player has these little cardboard pieces in the shape of an arrow, and it has a number on it. So if I used a 2 and there's slots along the side of the game, and I put my number 2 arrow on one end, that means I can take the second card in, and that's the card that I get to select. Now that card, that slot now has been filled by me, so there's the other side, so you could go on the other side if you wanted one like that, or from the bottom. But later, as the round progresses, then it becomes a little bit more cluttered and be like, well, the perfect card I want is right there, but all the slots are taken, so maybe I'm going to use that one. And because if you don't use it to point to the card that you want, you can use the base of it on the other board, place it down, and you can do a special action. One of them is that you can pick any card that you want. So it's kind of interesting, the drawing the cards, the playing the cards, the building up, and then putting everything together. So it was a very neat game. I've played it a few times now, but it was fairly new to the collection, so that was Meadow. In number 8 position, I have Splendor. And Splendor is funny. Every time I bring it out, my kid, Jerome, is just shocked at how good of a game it is. It's like it surprises him every time, but it is such a neat, simple game. The components, you have like the poker chips that are nice and clunky, so it kind of gives you that satisfaction as well. And this gameplay is very simple, but satisfying also. So the way that it works is on your turn, you can draw 3 different poker chips. So there's 3 different gems, or there are 5 or 6 different gems that you can draw from, and you can take different ones. Or if there's at least 4 poker chips there, you can take 2 of the same one. So you're kind of collecting all these gems, and when you have what you need to collect a card, then you can go and draw cards as well. So maybe you have a diamond card and it requires 2 blue gems and a green gem in order to be able to pick it up. So once you have that, you can turn in those poker chips that represents those gems. You take the diamond card, and now every time you get another card, if it requires a diamond, that card counts as a diamond automatically, so you can do it with less of the poker chips. And you build yourself up that way, so you can continue drawing these cards. Eventually, when you go into the higher level cards, these cards are going to have value as well. And I think the game is when somebody reached, I want to say 16 or 18. So when somebody reached that many points, it triggers the end of the game. So it goes finished a round, and then whoever has the most point is the winner. So it's a very simple, straightforward collecting, trading, and collecting these cards, but it's such a satisfying game to play. And then in number 7 position this month, we have Shifting Stones. Shifting Stones makes my list often. It's such a neat game. It looks beautiful on the table. It's super simple to teach and to play, and it plays very quickly, so it's just an easy one to get to the table. And the way that it works is you have cards, and in the middle of the table you have 9 big chunky tiles. They're cardboard tiles, and they have different colors on each side. So you'll have like one that's on one side is the yellow, the other side is the black card. Then you'll have 2 tiles that have similar colors on one side and the same on the other side, and so on. And they all randomly put on the table. Then you have on your cards, and they'll have a different pattern that you can do with those ones. So if you can match the pattern on the middle tiles to your cards, you can claim score the card, and then you get those points. Now you'll be needing to possibly to move things around, so it costs you 1 card to flip a tile to the other side, and it costs you 1 card to swap 2 tiles that are side by side. So you gotta decide which card you're gonna score, which cards you're going to discard in order to move the tiles around to get to the positions that you need. And then you do this until you go around, and the first person to have scored 8 cards, well, actually it depends on the number of players. So the first person to score the amount of cards that is required, depending on the number of players, triggers the end. So again, it finishes the round, and then whoever has the most points is the winner. Because you could trigger, 8, 1, and 2, so your score technically is quite low, and then a few people got some 3s and a couple 5s, and they would win. So it's just such a neat, simple, interesting game that just gets to the table often in my house. Then in number 6 position, I have Vampire Queen. Vampire Queen is a staple here. We play this one all the time. It's amazing. It's so much fun, and it's such a tiny, simple little card game, and it's a trick-taking game. So you play a card, and then the next person has to play a card that's higher, matching the number of cards that you've placed. So if I've put 3 4s, then they have to play 3 cards of a number that's higher than 4, and it goes around until everybody who could play has played, and then the person who wins that tricks puts all the cards away, and then they get to start the next trick. And the goal of the game is to get rid of all of the cards that are in your hand. Once somebody gets rid of all of the cards, you tally up the value of each card you have left, and that's your score. At the end of 5 rounds, is the player that has the least number of points is the winner. Now the interesting thing as well is 2 cards are vampire hunters, and once those are played, so if you play a vampire hunter, everybody has to place a card. Now it's not a trick, everybody just puts whatever card that they want, and they have to put 1 card in. Whoever has the highest card takes all of those cards, and it goes into their hand, making them less likely to discard their whole hand, right? So it makes sense to keep some low cards to play in case of a vampire hunter, and then that vampire hunter is also worth points. So there's 2, one is worth 15 points, one is worth 20 points, and those can never be discarded. So every round, 2 people or 1 person will end up with a vampire hunters in their hands, and they're gonna have to score those points. It's such a neat game. We play this one all the time. We teach this one to almost everybody who comes over. It's a great game. Oh, and let me show you the picture. It has like, each card has the different value from, it goes from 1 to 14, and 14 is the Vampire Queen, and she can be used as a wild or as a 14, and it all has like Victorian era vampire drawings for each numbers. It looks really neat, and it's a neat game. Then in number 5 position, I have Star Realms. Star Realms is probably my favorite deck building game, and it definitely is my boys' favorite deck building game, and this is one that they'll require to play, or if we say, okay, we're gonna play some games, right away this is one they recommend. So Star Realms, like you start off with your basic cards, and then will give you purchase or attacks, and you're each attacking each other. As you purchase, you'll be purchasing different cards from the market in the middle, and then those cards will have different factions. So you'll have the green cards, the blue cards, the yellow cards, and some of those cards will have it so that if you play multiple of the same color, you trigger extra abilities as well. Some cards will have the battleship where they just do the purchase of their attack. Someone might heal as well. And then you'll have the space station. Now the space station will stay in place, so they stay in front of you. They don't go away when you discard your cards, and they just always stay there, so they don't count towards your hand of cards either later on. So and they'll have special ability. And then when people attack you, depending on the space station they have, the space station might be protecting you, where they cannot hit you directly until this space station is destroyed. Such a neat game. Hero Realms plays the exact same, but it's the fantasy version of that game. But for some reason, even though I'm a big fantasy fan, way more than sci-fi, I like this version better. And this is one that we play all the time. Then, in number 4 position, I have Chinatown. So this game is not my game. My neighbor brought it over for game night one time and we got to play it. It's 1999, so it's quite of an older game, but it was so good. And it's so neat, and it's a simple game. So you start with a few cards, and those basically give you the rights to different buildings that will be in this town. And you'll kind of randomly start picking the ones you want to take, because you don't keep them all. So you select the ones you want to keep, the rest go back in the deck and they get shuffled in again. So now these are the cards that of properties that you own, and you can start putting buildings into them. Ideally, you want to try to get cards that are of locations that are adjacent to each other, because with the different building, so the tropical fish business, for example, you can have up to 4 of them together. So as a single business in a building, I think it pays you $10,000. Or if you have 2 touching, then it starts paying you more. But if you can build the full 4, so and they have to be in adjacent buildings that you own, and then you add the business into them, well, the more clusters of these businesses that you can create, the more they're going to be worth. So at the end of each round, so first we collect the businesses, the buildings, then we collect the businesses, and then we negotiate and we trade. And it's like, okay, I see that you have 34, so you probably would really like 33, which is right next, and I own 33, and I'm not really interested, but I would trade you this one if you give me this location, or if you give me that business. And then you're trading, and then you place your things, and then you score the money for each one. Then you go to the next round. So it's really simple, straightforward, and the bidding is interesting, and it's in your benefit to like, no, I'm not giving you that. Like, you gotta trade, because what are the chances you're gonna get all cards that are clustered together? So you trade. It was a very simple trading game, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's an older game. The look of it has that older game look as well. It's not a beautiful, beautiful game, but it was such a fun game to play. And then in number 3 position, I have ExLibraries. This is a game that for some reason I just figured I would like, and it's been on my wish list for a very long time. Somebody was selling it secondhand, so I'm like, oh, this is a sign I should get this one. So I ended up purchasing this game, and I got to play it for the first time here in the month of February. So you are building a library, and you're putting your bookshelves together. So it's really important that you have to maintain alphabetical order and numerical order, because there's different cards for each letters that represents the books. So for each, you got to make sure that they stay all on alphabetical order, but then there's different numbers in like the letter A, then you got to maintain numerical order within the letter as well. And you building your shelf, and it can be up to 3 shelves high. And mine, the picture there is quite square, but it doesn't have to be. But you can't go above 3 rows. So, you know, you would start like, okay, well, I get a D, so maybe I'll put that on the top because it's the beginning of the alphabet. Then you get an M, I'll put that underneath. And you know, so that'd be my 2nd row, and you kind of try to plan onto where you would put everything. And it's very possible that you blocked out a whole letter that you're just not going to be able to fit in. And then there's also the different type of books that's available, you know, and these are very magical themes. So, and the title, if you read the titles, it is hilarious. So I highly recommend when you're getting your books that you kind of read your cards in a different title on each one. So you get like the monster type books, you get like the potion, like there's all different categories, and you each have a different scoring goal, whereas like, hey, you're gonna score extra for these games, these books, so you're trying to get those books more. And there's the forbidden books as well, so it's like you want to have as little as possible as these ones, because these books are forbidden, and for everyone you have in your library is going to give you negative points. And then each round you get 3 location that comes out, and the location does different things. So it's worker placement as well, because you place your workers on where you're going to go and how you're going to collect these cards to go into your hand and to play them. It's such a neat game. I'm definitely not disappointed. I'll just kind of show you closer here the cards so you can see they all have the alphabet that it's part of. And then in the G I had 1 of 5 and 5 of 5. So there's 5 cards that are letter G. And I had number 1 and number 5. So if I'm going to place them, I got to make sure I maintain numerical order. So if I put a 1 and a 5 right next to it and I gain the 3, well, I can't fit that in now. Not unless something comes out in those cards that allows me to reallocate some of the books, and that might be a possibility, but it also might not be. So it was really neat at how quickly the game can change, because you never know what's going to come out, what you'll be able to do. Very great game. I'm really glad I got it, and it was on my wish list, and I see why now. It's a great game. Then in number 2 position, I have Dice Throne. We've been playing Dice Throne more and more, and my kids have declared, well, my stepson has declared it his most favorite game. And it's so neat because Dice Throne Season 1 has 8 different characters. Dice Throne Season 2 has another 8 characters. We have Marvel Dice Throne that's going to be coming at some point this summer. And I also had that one come over, like the pre-production copy was, my friend brought it over, so we got to play Marvel Dice Throne. Oh my god, it's so good. Now, I played Marvel Dice Throne, I think was after February, so maybe that's why I did make my number 1, but it's my number 2. So good. This game, I love it. You know, you select your character, you have all these different attacks and abilities that you can activate, but you got to roll the dice and try to get the symbols or the number required to activate that particular ability. And it's so... like each players have different type of actions that will match who they are. So, you know, the pyromancer can inflict burns on people, and then if you have a burn, then each round that comes your turn, you take some damage because you're on fire, you know, on top of the attacks that they can do. Or the pirate character, they collect doubloons, and then when you have every turn, they lose a doubloon, and if they ever get to the point where they have no doubloons, they become cursed, and you flip the board over. Now they have all sorts of different abilities that are a little bit stronger that they can do in their attack, but because they're cursed, they take a hit every time, so you want to make sure that you don't become cursed too early on. Each character plays differently, and it keeps it very fresh and very fun. So Dice Throne, Season 1, Season 2, Adventure actually makes the whole game into an adventure crawl. I would kind of count that all into one. It's so great. And then for my number 1 game during the month of February, and that is Legendary Encounters Predator. So I own Legendary Encounters Alien, and I played that one well before I even watched the Alien movies. And then, within the last year or 2, we watched the Alien movies and the Predator movies, and then it made me think of that game, and I was like, oh my god, hold on. I didn't realize how great and how thematic that game was, because I'd never seen the movies. So I hunted one down and got to play it, and we loved it. So it's been a great game in our collection, and I was like, okay, if I ever come across Predator, I'm getting that one as well. So somebody posted on the Board Game Exchange that they were selling their Predator version, and people are hunting me down saying, Melanie, aren't you into the Legendary games? So I was like, oh, yes I am. So we went and got this game. Now, this gentleman lives in the deep south of Calgary. I didn't know Calgary went so far south. And roundabouts at every intersection. I swear we went to 20 roundabouts to get to this house. So it's kind of like a whole adventure just getting this game. So we got this one back. And actually you could play this Predator and Alien together and do like the Alien versus Predator movie version in the board game as well. It plays very similar to the Alien version, and let me show you a picture. So it is a deck building game. You get your cards and you know, like, so you start with your basic cards, and as you play, you can either recruit new fighters to kind of go into your hand so that your deck becomes more powerful, or you can attack the predators that are coming out. And then each round you flip a card and the predators out, but you can't see them because they're see-through. So you gotta be able to scan the room, the area first, to see if you find a predator. Then when you see him, then you can attack him and try to attack before he reaches you and start attacking you. It was so neat, so thematic. I think out of the legendary versions so far, probably Alien's still my favorite. We had, when I bought this game, we had Alien and James Bond 007, so now I have Predator. And in the month of March, we actually bought the Marvel one as well. So maybe that'll make my list for the month of March. We'll have to see. But this was my #1 game for the month of February. So here's a quick recap at the top 9 game for the games played during the month of February. I am on Facebook. My Facebook group is Disbury and Area is playing all the games. I'm also on Instagram as boardgame_mama. I have a podcast that I do weekly with my friend Carly, so be sure to check that out, and that's called Board Game Specialist. And I am also on YouTube as Board Game Mama, so be sure to like and subscribe and view my other videos. So we will see you next month for the top game for the month of March, and so far March is looking pretty good, so you'll be sure to check that out. So bye everybody.